I'm going to read you something out that's on Twitter and Facebook that you might not get to see. It's a post by Lee Anderson, the MP for Reform for Ashfield. He's a very outspoken individual, wants to bring back capital punishment. He calls a spade because he actually knows how to bloody use one, because he's lived in the real world and he's been down the pit, so he knows how to make a wage packet, span out and feed a family, much to his ridicule from the lefties. You see, the thing about this, what I'm going to read you now, is the left don't like this. The mob in Westminster, and believe me, they are a mob, don't want him to talk about this because it makes their life uncomfortable. They're just going off for recess now for 6 weeks, and why do they need all this clutter in Parliament when, as you know, as the leader himself said, it's much easier to deal with Davos? So I'm going to read this out because in this day and age it's refreshing to see an MP have a pair of balls and stand up to the establishment. Here's Lee Anderson's own words. Enough is enough. I spoke with Nottinghamshire Police yesterday about this case. I was asked not to go public on this matter as it may affect the trial. Now what he's talking about here is a sexual attack on a young person. I'll continue. Are our judges and juries incompetent, or is there another reason I'm being asked to remain quiet? I've spent the last 24 hours mulling over this and cannot keep quiet. The man charged with this vile offence is an asylum seeker who has been living in Ashfield, my constituency. I have been banging on about illegal migration since I was elected. At first I was told by other MPs that I was a racist, a bigot, and I should shut up. I will not shut up and do not care about the consequences. This government is importing rapists, dual predators and vile criminals into our country. One moment they're attacking French police with weapons and using guns in northern France. The next minute they're in luxury hotels in our country and then placed in housing amongst us all. A note to the Labour government and the previous government, this is all down to you. Women and young girls are being attacked in their own towns and villages whilst you do nothing. Our police ferry Antifa to protest against genuinely concerned residents who are peacefully protesting, then have the nerve to tell us all to remain calm. This country is going to the dogs, and you are turning it into a third world toll, and we've had enough. I do not want these illegal migrants in my constituency or in my country. Then he's attached a link to the article in the Nottingham Post where he's had a bit of pushback from a journalist, a tin pot, two-bit journalist. They all are, aren't they? They all are still squeezing their spots, working online, just churning out garbage to keep their pathetic publications going, because the reality is that people are turning to social media and bloggers that they trust. Some people like me who do it for free, who don't want subscriptions. I don't want anything for this. My country's going down the pan and this is the only defence I've got. I'm not young enough, fit enough to fight, but I'm certainly savvy enough to put the wording out in a way that people can understand what's really happening, and with a shed load of inside contacts, I can tell you now that the only plan that's going to work is what Reform are going to do, which is get rid if they come in. This won't happen. A man like Farage would not have put men in hotels like this. He's been banging on about it for years. He was one of the first to draw attention to the cross-channel migrant situation, when, as we know, the actual problem is much bigger than that. And now we've got the greed of landlords with failing businesses. Yes, you failed. You didn't make enough from your hotels to keep them as hotels, so you've turned them over to migrants, handed over the keys, knowing full well you'll earn a shed load of money, and after they've finished trashing the place and not using the toilets properly and pooping in the bed and all the other things that they do that's simply not customary here, after they've done all that, you'll get the keys back to a refurbished hotel. You are really, truly a sickening bunch. Thank God one MP from the Reform Party is standing up publicly to what's being done to this country through the vile mob that inhabit Westminster and the even worse mob that fill our pages and our screens with utter bias and bullshit. They do not cover stories anymore. They try to steer the narrative. And the Tories set everything up for them to use. And the Tories gave them the fuel to fan the flames of this grotesque fire that's sweeping our country, that no town really wants. Who gave the councils permission to designate their towns as sanctuary city? That's a good one. That's a good question, because I don't ever remember being consulted about it, and that is definitely something that should have gone to referendum. We could have local referendums if we had a different government. Reform back referendums. They back the fact that the big stuff should come back to the public. It's easy to do. Switzerland use it. Look how Switzerland is well run. But you need an honest media to make it work. You need a media that's not colouring the narrative. But if you've got an honest government that's not trying to colour the narrative, that just wants to run the country and back out of your life, to not tell you to get a digital ID, to not tell you where and what to buy when you're spending your money, to not even question too much where and when you go into places. That's what I want to see, and Lee Anderson is part of that team. Lee Anderson has been heavily criticised by the left, but you'll notice the ones that criticise him have never done a proper day's work. I'm sorry, but journalism isn't a proper day's work. Journalism is a white-collar job where you go from institutionalised education into institutionalised thinking. Gone are the days of the basically investigative reporters. Tommy Robinson's about the closest you're going to get. And he's an amateur that's turned his hand to it. So clearly all those years you've spent at university, what did you learn? Other than how to be duplicitous. What did you learn? What did you come out of university thinking, I'll just get a job on Sky, someone will give me a sheet of paper with what I ought to say and I'll just blab it out? Because I don't see much honesty. Thank God for people like Lee Anderson. Thank God for Nigel Farage. Also standing up to the fact that the police bust counter-protesters in to a place where a child had been brutally attacked, her life changed forever. I got a message from a woman whose daughter had been attacked, not this instance, but her daughter had been attacked, sexually assaulted by a migrant. She said she found her daughter sitting in the bath, scrubbing her whole body till it bled with a nail brush to try and get herself clean. That's the reality of what's going on in this country. That's what households are suffering. Weeping children who can't sleep at night, who are then taken to the doctor who'll just prescribe them some sort of psychotic bloody drug to help them get over the fact that this shouldn't have happened. Many of them aren't even old enough to join in normal adult life, like driving a car and going in a pub. But they're old enough to have their human rights taken away by a vile, stinking foreigner who doesn't know how to behave because nobody's bothering to show them. Wouldn't it be a refreshing change to see these migrants, the police visit the hotel, lock them down and say somebody from this hotel has done X, Y and Z, and until you book your ideas up, you're not going out? Why can't we do that? And why can't we deport them? Any connection to any criminal activity, shoplifting, sexual offences, any activity, you're deported. That's what the government should be doing. They should be doing it right now. They should be drafting emergency laws like they did with lockdown. Get them out, get the laws out, make sure they understand, and if they don't, get rid of them. They're not our problem. The problem's coming from other people's countries, and you're hell-bent on the continuation of this drip-fed dilution of a perfectly good nation. Thank God for Lee Anderson.